Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This is my second video in blending your own fertilizers, sort of making specialized fertilizers from bagged products. I will link the first video in there. It talks a lot about how do you make the all-purpose fertilizer. That's just something that covers NPK, organic, and then you can just generally use that throughout your garden. At times you're going to want to build a fertilizer that has more phosphorus for root development, for your root crops, for plants that you want more flowers like peppers. And then you're also going to want to have a higher nitrogen fertilizer for your leafy greens. Leafy greens and the higher nitrogen fertilizer will be the third video. So today we're going to focus on increasing phosphorus in your fertilizer blend. And phosphorus is best added organically to your garden through bone meal. And these are three different examples of bone meal. This is my blend of a bulb and root fertilizer, just increasing the phosphorus using bone meal. And this whole video is about just teaching you how to blend different fertilizers together so that when you put the ratios of the NP and K from the different products together, you get an accurate representation of what the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are in your mix. This is not something you have to do, but watch this video and just enjoy it for, you know, the science, the experiment, the math, and really kind of making your own blends so that you can target different plants with different fertilizers when they might need it. Phosphorus, again, just want to stress, it really helps develop, helps the plant develops a great root system, helps them fight off diseases, helps create more flowering, and it helps the development of the root bulbs, or the bulbs that you might eat, or the tubers you might eat, such as beets, radishes, potatoes, ginger rhizomes. Anything that's sort of growing at that root level really enjoys more phosphorus. So you could just, you know, buy any granular organic fertilizer. It has NP and K in there, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and use that, and your plants are going to do okay. If you increase at specific times phosphorus, your plants might do a little bit better, and I'll be talking about that more in future videos. Today's just about how do you kind of up the phosphorus. So the first thing you have to understand is that the bone meal in this bag is a 4-12-0 NP and K, 4 nitrogen, 12 phosphorus, 0 potassium. This one is a 1-25-0 NP and K, 1 nitrogen, 25 phosphorus, 0 nitrogen, and this one is a 6-8-0. So right there, they all say bone meal, they all say organic bone meal, but they're different percentages of phosphorus. So the first thing you have to understand is the concept of equal parts. So in this bone meal, it's a 1-25-0. So if you take out a pinch, it's still 1-25-0. If you take out a cup, it's still 1-25-0. If you take out a small shot glass, it's still 1-25-0. That means it's 1% nitrogen, 25% phosphorus, 0% potassium. So no matter what you take out of it, the ratios of these products in there are 1, 25, and 0. In whatever part you pull out. What does that mean? So this is one part, and this is one part. These are equal parts. So when you mix equal parts, you then can divide by 2, and you will get your new ratio. And let me show you what I mean by that. So in the original video, when we made the all-purpose fertilizer, we used 4 parts. We used basically, let's just say, 1 cup of each. And the first fertilizer was 1 cup at a 3-4-4 NPK. The second one was a 3-4-3 NPK. The third one was a 3-5-6 NPK. And the fourth one was a 2-5-3 NPK. You add those up, you get 11, 18, 16, and then you divide by 4. And you end up with a 2.8 nitrogen, 4.5 phosphorus, and a 4 potassium all-purpose fertilizer. And let me just show you what that looks like. Now the reason that I like putting it in these containers is because I can blend it and I can add in different things, but also when you store bone meal, and especially if it's outside, mice have chewed holes in this bag and in this bag. So you really want to put your fertilizers into a 5-gallon bucket. So this is my blend that I did in the first video, and it's a 2.8, 4.5, 4 NP and K. So if I want to increase the phosphorus, I have to add bone meal to that. Now, again, this was a 1-25-0, this was a 4-12-0, and this was a 6-8-0 NP and K, I believe. They're all 3-pound bags. That means That's an equal part, that's an equal part, that's an equal part. Sometimes you're going to find these on sale, you're going to find different mixes. So before I start adding bone meal to my all-purpose fertilizer, I'm going to blend all three of them together. So I take 3 pounds of a 125-0, that's one part, 3 pounds of a 412-0, that's one part, 6 pounds of the 680, that's one part. Total them up, it's 11 nitrogen, 45 phosphorus, 0 potassium, and then I divide by 3. And I end up with a 3.65 nitrogen, 15 potassium, 15 phosphorus, 0 potassium. This mix of the 4 bone meals, of the 3 bone meals, is going to be what I add to my all-purpose fertilizer to create my bulb and root fertilizer. I hope that makes sense. It is a little bit technical, but this is how you can blend different products together and get a pretty good estimate of what the actual N, P, and K are. So let me do that with these fertilizers, and then we will mix them to create the bulb and root fertilizer. I blended together the 3 different bone meals, and before we go on, I just want to say this is a little more technical. Compost itself, the best thing for your garden, is well below a 111 NP and K, and you can just use that. Your plants get what they need. So you don't need to over stress about all these numbers of NP and K that I'm talking about, but it's kind of fun. It does make a difference, but this is something you can kind of graduate to as you get more experience in the garden. And if you were going to use the bone meal that was 1 nitrogen, 25 phosphorus, 0 potassium, you would do 1 part of the bone meal, 1 part of the all-purpose blend that you made, and then you total it together. You get a 3.8, a 29.5, and a 4. Divide that by 2 because you used 2 parts, and you end up with a 1.9 nitrogen, 14.75 phosphorus, 2 potassium. I really like this for the bulb fertilizer and the root fertilizer. If you can find the 125-0, I recommend getting that because it really creates a nice high phosphorus that I think makes a difference. And then your other numbers are low enough that you're not really introducing that into the mix for various reasons, like you may not want more nitrogen with your pepper plants because you don't want more leaf growth. You really want to focus on flowering. But again, I don't want to overcomplicate it. That's something you can graduate to. But this is how you blend fertilizers together to make a really nice NP and K that's really made for bulbs and roots. So let me blend together this and the all-purpose and show you what that turns out to be. We are doing this by volume with equal parts. Weight does make a difference, but generally speaking, we don't have to over worry about that. For instance, the bone meal has smaller particles, and when you weigh that, it weighs at 14.9 ounces. There's less airspace in there. And the all-purpose fertilizer that I made has bigger particles. It's a little bit heavier, 15.8, but that's close enough. It's not going to influence these ratios that much. So we take, let me bring this down here. The all-purpose fertilizer I made, 1 part, 2.8, 4.5, and 4. And I know this is science and math, and this is something I enjoy. But I want to again stress, you don't have to really follow this if you're just getting started, and there's no need to overcomplicate things. After we make this, I'll talk about how I use these different fertilizers. For the bone meal, it's now a 3.65, 15-0 NP and K. Put it in there, and it's basically a 50-50 mix. Mix it together well. Bone meal also supplies calcium to your organic fertilizers, which will help, ensure that calcium's there for plant functions, but it really does help with, preventing blossom end rot. Although that's typically a watering issue, it's good to know you have calcium in there. So after we do 1 part of that, 1 part of that, we total it, 6.45, 19.5, and 4, divide by 2, and my root and bulb fertilizer is now about a 3.25 nitrogen, 9.75 phosphorus, 2 potassium. I use this predominantly for my potatoes, my sweet potatoes, my ginger, my root crops. I mix this well into the planting area, if it's the raised beds or earth beds, if it's my containers, and this way I don't have to go to different products and, just take out different products and use those. I can just carry one container out, my bulb and root, which is the increased phosphorus. Looks similar to this, and I just cast this where I need it. I also use the higher phosphorus about mid-season. After my peppers are established and they're growing and they're getting to the point where they're flowering, I switch over to the higher phosphorus fertilizer for my peppers because I don't want any excess nitrogen. And the nitrogen, or higher nitrogen, and the nitrogen here is about a 3 with a higher potassium. If I wanted to increase the phosphorus even more, I would add in a third part of the same exact thing. That will increase these numbers. You divide by 3, you'll end up with a lower nitrogen and a higher phosphorus. So you can keep adding in additional parts of the bone meal to further increase the amount of phosphorus in your mix. But I'm okay with this. I may, bump it up, which would make this 34.5 divided by 3, which is going to give me approximately 11.5 phosphorus, but it will also cut the nitrogen down below 3. That's a lot to take in. I'm more interested in teaching you how to blend these fertilizers together and use the NP and K and their equal ratios in a way that you understand what your NP and K is going to be when you blend them. That was a mouthful. Don't over stress that you're just gardening and you have to do, what the rusted gardener is saying here for leafy greens, all-purpose bulb and root. You can, but again, compost is a 1-1-1, well below that NP and K, and plants have been surviving on that for centuries. The next fertilizer that I make is really increasing nitrogen with blood meal, and that blood meal is a 14 nitrogen, 0 phosphorus, 0 potassium, and that's really for my leafy greens, spinach, lettuce, kale, and the process will be very similar to what I showed you here. Hope it makes sense. Hope it gives you some confidence to have some fun, experiment, blend fertilizers together by using equal parts. That's an equal part. This goes a lot quicker if you use like a gallon bucket. This way you're not, doing 10 of these. You can just fill up a gallon bucket with your all-purpose. You can fill a gallon bucket up with your bone meal, mix it together, put a lid on it, and you're good to go. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com, and don't fear the math. Thanks for watching.